Life Rhythms with Ryan Skyy. Observing the world around me, looking inward, trying to make sense of it all. Hello, my inner explorers. Welcome to Life Rhythms radio show. This is your host, DJ producer Ryan Skyy. As a DJ and producer, I spend a lot of my time observing the world around me, looking inward, trying to make sense of it all. I've been doing it in song form, and now I do it on the radio show. Each episode of Life Rhythms, we feature one guest and one song, and I choose a personal growth topic around that song. I'm excited because I'm joined in the studio today by Jerro, and we're going to be featuring Jerro's single, Give It Up. And when I was listening to Give It Up, the lyrics, run it like we'll give it up, I immediately thought about the idea of living life without regret. And that's a running theme that drives me, and I'm curious to talk to Jerro about that. Living life without regret. So that's going to be the topic of today. And we're going to dive into his music, and he's got a show coming up in Academy. He's done collaborations with Le Youth and Sultan and Shepard. We're going to talk about his experience with mentors and just the approach to life and to music that separates artists that are making it to ones that are wanting to get started. Like what is the goods? What are the ingredients that help somebody navigate this industry? So we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to talk to Jerro and feature the song Give It Up after this break on Adobe Radio. Welcome back to Life Rhythms radio show. I'm your host, Ryan Skyy. I've got my guest in the studio with me today, Jerro. Hey, Jerro.
Hey, how's it going?
So good to have you here, man.
I'm stoked as well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I love the new single we're featuring, Give It Up.
Yeah.
We played a little snippet of it on the way into the segment. And, you know, on Life Rhythms, it's a show about personal growth. So the topic I wanted to talk about today with Give It Up was specifically around the lyrics, run it like we'll give it up. So I thought about, okay, run it like we'll give it up. To me, it was like, let's go all in because we might lose what we have. We might have to give it up. And I thought about regret. I thought, okay, it's kind of like living life without regret. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's regret is like an important part of my life.
Yeah.
It's like a way I motivate myself.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would say I have a positive relationship with regret.
Uh-huh.
What's your take on when you just hear, like, what's your take on that?
Like, I always feel like you should live your life without having any regrets about anything, because you don't want to end up being old and look back at your life and be like, oh damn, like if only I took that chance, or if only I went that route, or like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I live by that quote, if that makes sense.
Is this something that you have experience with in terms of like, have you had regrets and then kind of like the negative feeling of it changed the way you approach life? Or have you always had this approach maybe from your upbringing?
I think when I finished college, I was on a cross point. Either I went fully with music, or I went on like a career path with like in terms of like a salesman, because that was what I was gonna do.
Okay.
And I think if I always knew that I wanted to do something with music, but as you hear the stories about music business or creative businesses. It's a hard business, and it's uncertain and stuff like that. And I always knew that I wanted to do something with music, but I kind of was always like afraid as well a little bit, and thinking of like, oh damn, what if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
But then I was like, no, let's just go for it. And I think if I like picked the other path, like the more stable path with like a steady career and stuff like that, I would have regretted it like right after.
Yeah. That reminds me of an interview I was watching of Jim Carrey.
Uh-huh.
And he talks about how, I don't remember the occupation of his dad, but his dad had chosen a quote unquote safe route.
Yeah.
And at some point in his career, he ended up losing his job.
Yeah.
And Jim Carrey realized like, oh wow, like if I can fail doing something safe, I might as well fail or do something that I love.
Yeah, I've seen that interview too, and
you've seen it?
That was one of the lines that really stuck with me.
He also, did you see what he did about like the check? Where
Yeah.
He wrote,
Yeah.
I did that too.
Uh-huh.
Hasn't worked out for me yet.
No, you're not yet.
Okay, so Jim Carrey wrote a check to himself for like $10 million.
Uh-huh.
And he post dated it however many years in the future, and he kept it in his pocket, and it's this like magical story. And then, right before the date on the check, he was able to cash it because I think he got The Mask.
The Mask and then Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
That movie, yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna do that, right? Because I'm all about manifesting. So I wrote myself a check a couple years ago, and I dated it for 2022.
Uh-huh.
November 2022 rolled around. I didn't make my $10 million. So I took a pen and I turned the 2 into an 8. So now I have till 2028 to make
There
it.
we go. But like, yeah, I'm all about like manifesting things as well. And like, I've seen the Jim Carrey interview as well. And the first time that I've seen it, I think it was like it's on Netflix, right? It's about a movie that he did, like, and then he also talks about his life and like how his dad.
Yeah, I think I saw clips on YouTube, but maybe it was taken from.
Yeah.
It was taken from something.
I think it's taken from a documentary on Netflix about him.
Okay.
And similar to his dad, my dad was a DJ as well. Not like his dad, but my dad was a DJ back in the days as well. And he just gave it up for like his ex-girlfriend.
Ooh.
And he went on like a career path that he didn't necessarily like in sales as well. And he lost so many jobs because of like economic crisis and stuff like that. And I think my dad was one of the first who told me like, I'll support you no matter what, but I have to see that you put the work into it. But if music is something that you really want to do, you should go for it.
Yeah.
But and I'll support you no matter what, but I have to see that you put the work into it and don't be lazy.
Yeah. Did you give yourself a set amount of time for the music, like a time frame, or were you just kind of all in indefinitely?
No. As soon as I had a contract to work at a company in Belgium as a salesman, and the night before I went on and signed the contract, I told my parents like, "Look, I'm not doing this," and they were like, "Oh, like why not?" It's like because I feel like it's not something for me, and I feel like I'm gonna regret it like right after I do it. They were like, "So what do you want to do?" I was like, "I just want to make music, and like I feel there's something in there." And instead of like saying like no, like take the smart or like the safe route, they were like, "You know what? Like as long as you're like really passionate about it, because we can see that you're passionate about it, and as long as you put the work and effort into it, we'll support you." And right from that moment, I just started making music. I think like 90 hours a week from Monday up till Sunday, and and I just had the best time. And like,
were you a musician at that point? Like,
No.
did you have to teach at that moment? You had to learn music.
no, I wasn't a musician at all. Like, I was like working with Fruity Loops, and I knew my way around a little bit. But as soon as you start in putting a lot of hours, the results are gonna come quicker as well. Yeah, and I think a year and a half later, I signed my first EP on Lane 8's label, and a couple of months, I think 2 years after that conversation, I was able to make a living out of my music and like be a self-employed artist, and that was during COVID. So that was even before touring and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so and now looking back, my parents are so proud, and like,
Yeah, I bet.
yeah, I'm like, if I just went the safe route, because all my friends were making lots of money buying houses and stuff like that, and I didn't have money. I couldn't buy a house or like, and it's scary at a point.
Yeah.
Because you mirror yourself to your friends and to people close to you. But I was like, no, like I know that there's something here, and I know that there is a career in music for me, and I just don't want to end up being 60 years old and be like, ah, damn, like I wish I would have like taken the leap of faith.
Yeah, that idea of potential regret could be a huge driving force. I wrote a quote. I always write a quote for each episode,
Uh-huh.
and then at some point, and this reminds me of the quote, so I'm gonna read it now, because it's about what we're talking about. So my quote says, "Regret gets a bad rep. it can actually have a positive impact on our quality of life. If we focus regularly on how painful regret would feel in the future, we can use that to motivate us to take action towards an aim.
Yeah.
And if we're already experiencing regret, it can serve as a vehicle for changing our behavior to achieve a different outcome.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So like in the beginning when I talked about I have a positive relationship with regret, it's kind of what you said. It's like I use it because I imagine in the future, and actually this reminds me, are you familiar with Stoicism? The Stoics?
I don't think I am.
It's a philosophy that started in ancient Greece
Uh-huh.
and has been adopted, ever since then, for thousands of years. Like one of the most famous Stoics is Marcus Aurelius. He's a Roman emperor,
Uh-huh.
and he was a Stoic philosopher. But the Stoics, they had something that they called negative visualizations. So it was like negative visualizations. They called that the premeditation of evils. So like basically what they would do is kind of what we're talking about. Like they would think into the future, like worst case scenario, or they would imagine regret in the future.
Uh-huh.
But they would like they would actually like meditate on that.
Oh,
So they would
okay,
close
yeah.
their eyes, and they called it like the negative visualization. So they would close their eyes and they would visualize this future of being 60 years old, having not pursued the music career,
Uh-huh.
And what that life looks like, and what you're going to feel, what you're going to think, and letting those, like really like sitting in those feelings that come up,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then using that to color like your behaviors in the present.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And yeah, I stand by that 100% because, and I tell this to all my friends as well. Like some of my friends, they want to start a business or like change their career path, and like I'm closing in on 30,
Okay.
and a lot of my friends are like 29, 30 years old, so it is scary. Like if you're not happy at your job right now and you want to do completely different thing, it is scary. But I just tell my friends like just go for it, because like you don't want to it's not life is so short, like take that leap of faith and see where it gets to you, where it brings you. And like if you really trust yourself and the process, you'll get there where you want to be. But like don't expect it to be like I don't like to put a time frame on it, because like it'll stress you out, and that it would make me stress out. I'm just like, it's gonna happen no matter what, as long as you put all the effort you can into it.
Yeah. And there's all these competing stories.
Yeah, true.
I try to really pay attention to what stories are coming at me from who. Like if people are giving advice, like who's the person giving me advice?
Mhm.
What is their worldview? How are they approaching their life? And I really try to pay attention to that before I take it
Yeah.
seriously. When I first started my career out and I was new to production, new to music, and I was, at least me personally, insecure. I wasn't that good at it. And I remember I had a mentor at the time who, positive in a lot of ways, but then he would also say, he was decades older than me.
Uh-huh.
And he would kind of say little comments to me about like, you're never going to be able to compete with the 15-year-old bedroom DJ in Europe, or, and like these kind of like a lot of cynical comments.
Yeah.
Not meaning to discourage me, but definitely just coming from his own worldview of like having been decades in the industry. He's done well. He's had like gold records and done remixes, and he's done well, but he never got out of the city he's in. He never got to where he never got his due. And then he sees all these young up and coming producers getting their due. And it's over the years, he's let it build this internal story.
Yeah.
And then so here I am. But it's so dangerous because like, I'm so like, thank God I worked through it.
Yeah.
Because I was vulnerable. Like someone's vulnerable when they're first starting out. I don't know how you felt.
I was, when I started out making music, I think that was around like 2013.
Yeah.
So Martin Garrix was really big. I mean, he's still really big, but he just broke through, and like Avicii and for example, like Martin Garrix, he's like younger than I am, and like my friends were like, "Oh, look at how young he is! Like he already made it, and you're just starting." And I'm like, "Yeah, well." And then like
I hate that shit.
yeah, or like after like 2 or 3 years making music, some of my friends were like, "When are you gonna release something?" Like, and I was like, "It's not the right time yet." And they were like, "Oh, but like you've been working on it for 2 years now. Like maybe it's not for you." Or like, and there were actually a lot of people who told me that, like, "Oh, it's like even after 2 years you haven't released anything." I'm like, stop saying that. It's not doing anything good. Like,
Yeah,
you know?
you have to protect yourself
Yeah.
against these kinds of comments and stories. I really don't believe people mean harm.
No. They don't
I
mean.
don't think they realize.
Yeah, and I also think like sometimes people say stuff like that because they are afraid to take those steps themselves,
Yeah.
or they have not like quote unquote failed, but like stopped believing in the process, and that's why they're like, "Oh no, it's not gonna work because it didn't work for me." You know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does make sense. It's
Because someone who is like really confident in their own capabilities, they will always tell you like, "No, you can do it. Go for it. You can do it." And like someone who is not really comfortable, they would be like, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." Yeah, that's how I view it.
yeah, and you have to look at. I mean, it is true. They say that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
True.
Tends
Yeah.
to affect your. It tends to be a predictor of where you're going to be at financially and just mentally.
Yeah.
And I've tried to always be mindful of who I allow into my space.
Yeah.
Because of what we're talking about. Because you're just hanging out with people and they're just talking, but it's just their beliefs are spewing out. Just
Yeah.
the way they see the world is spewing out. If you're around the right kind of people, it can have a really motivating effect.
Yeah.
But if
100%.
there's kind of like a residual of some people in your life, maybe from like childhood or high school, or maybe you grew up in the same neighborhood, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to approach their life the way you are. You just kind of like you were in their vicinity, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be easy to adopt some of those
Yeah.
limiting beliefs.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. This reminds me of do you watch any TED Talks?
I used to watch a lot of TED
You're
Talks.
familiar with it?
Yeah.
All right. There's a TED Talk called Why You Will Fail to Have a Great Career.
Uh-huh.
It's so good.
I've never seen that
It's
one.
one of the best ones. It's by Larry Smith. It's called Why You Will Fail to Have a Great Career. I want to paraphrase some of it.
Yeah, of course.
Some of it I'll quote because it's so good that it's worth getting it into this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we're talking about like these people who didn't pursue their own dreams.
Uh-huh.
And then they're kind of like projecting that onto you.
Yeah.
So, okay, why you will fail to have a great career. So Larry Smith says, no matter how many times people tell you, if you want a great career, you have to pursue your passion. You have to pursue your dreams. You have to pursue the greatest fascination in your life. You hear it again and again, and then you decide not to do it. It doesn't matter how many times you download Stephen Jay's Stanford commencement speech, you still look at it and you decide not to do it.
Uh-huh.
So then Larry Smith, he goes through all the excuses that people have of like why they're not going to pursue something. Like everything you can think of. Like I don't have the time, or maybe like I need to take care of my mom, she's sick, or I getting into a relationship.
Yeah.
He goes through all of it. So and then he gets towards the end of it, he gets to the point where now you're a parent. And your kid comes to you and your kid's like, I know what I want to be I know what I want to be. And the kid's really good at math. So the parent is like, okay, they're going to want to be a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid's like, I want to be a magician. I want to like do magic in front of people.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, and this is the end of it. So then he says, what do you say to your kid? He's like, you say, that's risky, kid. You might fail, kid. Don't make a lot of money at that, kid. I don't know, kid. You should think about that again, kid. You're so good at math. Why don't you? And the kid interrupts and the kid says, but it's my dream. It's my dream to do this. And what are you going to say? You know what you're going to say? Look, kid, I had a dream once too, but So how are you going to finish the sentence with your but? But I had a dream too once, kid, but I was afraid to pursue it. Or are you going to tell him this? I had a dream once, kid, but then you were born. Holy shit. But then you were born, right? So then the very ending of it, he says, and that's why you're not going to have a great career unless, that most evocative of all English words, unless. But the unless word is also attached to that other most terrifying phrase, if only I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
If only I had. If you ever have that thought ricocheting in your brain, it will hurt a lot.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's really powerful.
Fuck. I mean, I think about that. When I first watched that, and then he talks about the if only I had, and he says it will hurt a lot, like that really hit me in the core.
Yeah, of course.
I was like,
totally.
Jesus, I don't ever want to feel that.
And I think like a lot of people think like if you're 20 years old and you haven't, thing is like in music, in sports, in everything, you see a lot of young people really stand out. Like young DJs really becoming big, like young football players, soccer players, like really getting big. And then maybe as like a 20-year-old, you're like, oh shit, like my time has already passed. But it's not like that. In my opinion, it's not. Like there's no right time to pursue your dreams. No. The right time is always to pursue your dreams, in my opinion.
Yeah, as long as you're alive, you should be moving towards a name.
Yeah, 100%.
And the other thing, like we were talking about stories, even the whole age thing may not always be true. Like, we don't know how long our generation is going to live.
Of course.
And with the advancement of technology, I mean, like I've been studying this, and scientists believe it's very, okay, with the leading aging expert out of Harvard, his name is Dr. Sinclair. Based on the research, he believes that the first human to make it to 150 years old is alive on the planet right now.
Oh, wow.
Based on where we're at with medicine. Whales live at least 150 years. I think they live like a couple hundred years because of evolution. Elephants have evolved to be immune to cancer. It's possible for us to live to 150 plus years. So I think about that. I'm like, okay, am I really going to not pursue something because I think I'm too old?
Yeah, no.
But then I live to 150 years and I'm like, Jesus, I had 120 years left. Yeah. Why did I give that up? Like, oh my God, if only I knew I was going to live this long.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, true. True, 100% true. And like, yeah, no, I just feel like when you have a dream and you really want it, the way that I pursued it, or like, I always feel like prepare yourself mentally or put yourself in a mental state of that you're already living the dream you want. Be the person who you want to be. Like dip yourself in that mental state of like, oh no, I am a DJ. I am a big DJ. I'm playing big stages. When I was like, I do this now as well. Like, but when I started making music, I would spend like an hour watching videos of like Eric Prydz or like Martin Garrix or Tiesto playing like these big stages. And I would close my eyes and I would envision that it was me, and like the crowd was cheering for me. And
did you do that intuitively?
Yeah, no, yeah, and that was before I saw The Secret and stuff like that.
What were you? What pushed you to that? What were you trying to overcome inside to do that? What was that a strategy for?
Just to like put myself in a good mindset of like, yeah, no, if these people can do it, you can do it as well. And I still do it. I still do it. I just like close my eyes and like think that I'm playing like these big stages, and like I envisioned myself, I think 2 years ago, of like playing a big stage at EDC.
Yeah.
And I played EDC Mexico last weekend in front of 20,000 people, and I was like, holy fuck, like, yeah, it worked.
That's crazy. I saw videos of the crowd at the EDC Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And I think I saw Ricky Romero posted on Instagram, and just watching him get up so elevated on the stage, and then seeing that sea of people, and then he's up there. It's like he's in a hot air balloon almost.
Yeah,
you know, it's like you're so elevated.
Yeah,
it's got to be crazy.
It is crazy. And it's even more crazy that like at the moment when I was playing, it didn't really hit me. But afterwards, when I was done, I saw the videos of like people tagging me. I was like, holy fuck! Like,
It was
oh
a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, and I was like, oh shit! Like, I just played that stage that I envisioned 2 years ago. Not
It,
the same stage, but like I played the big stage that I've always like envisioned myself playing.
so it was a moment where the vision started to match
Yeah,
reality.
yeah.
That's interesting. And now when you look back, I mean, it was last week.
That was Sunday.
It was Sunday.
Yeah.
Does it now seem like a dream?
Um. Nah.
Like, is it?
It feels like more. Like, if that makes sense. I'm hungry for more. I had like it was my first experience. I'm like, okay, I loved it. I really loved it, and now I wanna do it again as soon as possible. So now I'm gonna,
Sure.
now I'm gonna work harder, even harder to get that
It's like
feeling
more of
again.
this, please.
Yeah, yeah.
Did it surprise you how normal it actually was to do it compared to what you were
I was
thinking about?
so nervous, like weeks before. Weeks before, I was so nervous until the day itself. And one of my managers, Jack, he came with me, and we were in the elevator in the hotel, going down, waiting for our ride to the festival. And he was like, "Are you nervous?" I was like, "No, dude. Like, I'm not. Like, I know that I was like, quote unquote, born to do this. So I'm like, no, I'm not nervous. I'm ready." Of course, you have like these healthy butterflies in your stomach,
Yeah.
but it's not. I was afraid that I was gonna be nervous to the point where I would like faint, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well,
But no, I got on stage and I was like, for a moment, I was like, holy fuck, that's a lot of people. But as soon as I started playing, I was like, I was in this like zone. I was like zoned out. Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I, I had Bob Moses on previously, and they were talking about how surprised they were when they would achieve something that they always wanted. Like, you kind of put something on a pedestal, like, I want to play that stage. I want to win. I want to be nominated for a Grammy. And how amazing it is for those things to happen, but how surprised they were that it was like, oh my God, it felt so normal.
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah.
wait, this is way more normal. Like,
Yeah.
it's just something that happened. And it's great, but it's just something that happened.
And I think that's because you envisioned yourself. You put yourself already in that state of mind of like, no, it's gonna happen, or like, no, like it already happened.
Yeah. So you're prepared. That's true, because the mind doesn't know the difference between visualizing and what's actually happening.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. So we were going to take a break. We're going
Yep.
to finish the
Sounds
segment
good.
one, take a quick break, and then we'll get back and we'll finish this conversation.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to Life Rhythms Radio Show. I'm your host, Ryan Skyy. I've got my guest with me, Jerro, and we're featuring his single, Give It Up, which you just heard a snippet of coming into this segment. So, Jerro, I want to ask you about your Canopy Club DJ sets
Uh-huh.
on YouTube. So, you did a live DJ set, Canopy Club in Denver, and you did one in Venice Beach.
Yeah.
I was looking at the comments on YouTube. These are some of the comments of your set. First comment: my husband passed in January, and I just hit a deep wave of grief. And coming across this has allowed me to resurface all the good memories to follow in place of the despair that was trying to settle in. Thank you. Please keep doing what you do. Another comment said, this is pure medicine for the soul. And then the last comment I wrote down, I don't listen to a lot of progressive melodic house, but this is not only the greatest set I've ever heard regarding this subgenre, but one of the greatest sets I've ever listened to in general. Not a bad song played. Beautiful, uplifting, nostalgic.
Yeah,
It's like, damn.
That's amazing to read.
Yeah, that's what I want to. I'm curious. I wanted to ask you about first of all, what is Canopy Club?
So Canopy Club, so I released an album in October 2021, and it's called Coming Home, and around that time that was like during COVID still, and a lot of DJs were doing live streams or doing like these YouTube sets on like really cool locations in nature. And the label asked us to like record a video, a live set video to promote the album. And we were like, what if we invite like 20 or 30 people, all within like the regulations of COVID back then. I think like things were open. LA wasn't on lockdown back then, and we were thinking like, what if we could rent out like a cool like patio or stuff like that, and like fit like 30 people, maybe some friends, maybe some fans, industry people. I would just like vibe, and we did it. And I think for the first Canopy Club, there were like 30, 40, no, I think 30 people who were attending it, and it was honestly such a vibe. That was actually the first time that I played in front of people. So
Wow.
I was nervous as well. That's when I was nervous. That's
Yeah.
what,
So that was your first experience?
yeah, and it was a
Wow.
lot of fun. And honestly, like I didn't think any of it. I thought it was a really cool video, and we put it up on YouTube. And for some reason, people really loved it. And no, I think the first one has over like 1.5 million streams already.
Yeah.
And we were like, one of my managers was like, okay, what if we like do it in a different city every year, and we brand it as Canopy Club? Honestly, I don't really know what Canopy stands for.
Interesting.
But he was like, what if we brand it as Canopy Club and do it in a different city every year? And so last year we did it in Denver, and we upscaled it, and we were like, okay, like I think we had room for 100 people. We were like, the first 100 people who text us get like a guestless spot or a +1 guestless spot, and it was like sold out in like I think like 40 minutes, I think. And I think now we're gonna do it in I think Chicago this year on like a boat. I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but I don't. Doesn't really matter. And like we yeah, it's something that we want to give back to the fans. You know, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be recorded. It's free booze at the show. I mean, I think it's free booze. I don't know, but it's something to give back to the fans, if that makes sense. Like it's free. There's no entrance ticket, and it's honestly such a great time meeting fans before the show and after, and like, yeah, it's honestly the best time.
It's a cool first experience DJing, because I want to point out for listeners that I was looking at the set list,
Uh huh.
and it's almost all your music. It's almost
Yeah.
all Jerro tracks.
Yeah.
So getting these kind of comments about this being one of the greatest sets people have ever heard, it's your music.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's very cool that your first set, like my first DJ set, I wasn't able to play all original music,
Uh huh.
because I
Yeah.
was just starting out. I didn't have original music at the time. And that's really cool to be able to just right from the gate come out,
Yeah.
first DJ set, all your music. It's like you're completely in alignment, right, with your creative
Yeah.
being.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So you guys are going to do that every year, potentially?
We're gonna do it every year. I think like we're gonna do it in Chicago in the summer, and then we're gonna keep it in the US for a while. But I mean, the bigger plan is to like have it all over the world, maybe twice a year. But we're gonna keep it in the US for a while. And like we always want to like not. I don't think we are always gonna go for like a rooftop party.
Yeah.
I think like Chicago's gonna be on a boat, or like it's just like an endless. The options are endless, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can change it up in each city.
Yeah, and we work with promoters from each city. So for Denver, we worked with a promoter from Denver, and then in Chicago, we're gonna work with a promoter from Chicago. So yeah, it's honestly just so fun to see that like fans are really loving it, and like the appreciation that fans show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the style of the music that you're doing, it's like melodic house, and
Uh-huh.
my take on it is, at least this song, "Give It Up," it kind of has like a melancholy feel, and a lot of your music it's pretty, it's legato, and it's dreamy.
It's dreamy.
It's very dreamy.
Yeah.
And how were you making this kind of music right from the beginning, or did you experiment with different genres before settling on this?
Yeah, I've experienced with like EDM, big room stuff, and then I slowly progressed into trance music, listening to Above and Beyond. Then I came across like Eric Pritz, and I always loved like Eric Pritz's melodies and his chord progressions, like his track piano, some of the best chord progressions ever.
Yeah,
Um,
classic.
and but I was still making like faster tracks, and that's when I came across Lane 8. I was like, like let me try to slow the BPM down, and it
Yeah.
worked really well with the melodies that I was making. I always as well, also been a huge fan of Avicii and his melodies,
Okay.
so I like drew my inspiration from Avicii as well.
Yeah.
But like slowing my BPM down, that was like life changing. I was like, holy shit, like this is it. If that makes
If
sense.
yeah, it does make a lot of sense. It felt like it resonated with you more.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of when I first started out making music, I was doing more singer-songwriter stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't putting music out because I always felt like it was missing something.
Yeah.
And then actually that mentor I talked to you about, he took a song I wrote and he made it into a dance track.
Uh-huh.
And it was the first time I could hear,
What?
yeah. And it got my wheels turning. And then I realized, oh, what I love about making dance music is the sound design, the options
Are endless.
are endless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, that's what felt like it was missing. And that like aha moment is what I felt when I started making dance music. It's like, oh, this feels much better.
And I've had another of that aha moment, I think like 2 months ago. So I'm working on a lot of new tracks right now, and for a period of time I was like not afraid to step outside of my comfort zone, but I was like, no, like these sounds work, so why would I change it? But then my managers, they were like, no, try something different. It's good to try something different. And it took me a while to make myself comfortable with trying something different, but as soon as I tried it, I was like, holy fuck, it opened up a whole new world again for me with like opportunities and like new arrangements, new sounds. Like, yeah, and
Yeah.
still staying true to like my sound, if that makes sense, but like taking it in different direction. And like, I think with Give It Up, that's it. You can slowly start hearing it with Give It Up, and then I have another track coming out with Shalou, and that's when you can like really hear not like a totally different sound, but like a more evolved sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah, what's evolved about it? Like compared to what we've heard right now.
Some of my earlier stuff, or like when I started, it had like a lot of like the same arrangements, and like the plug melody, the Jerro plug is what everyone calls it. And like I'm not gonna ban that. I just wanna now I'm doing more like vocal shots and like pitched up vocals, or like even like I'm making a track right now which is like indie dance music, and which has like a cool bass to it, and like I honestly can't wait for people to hear it because I'm like super stoked about it. And
That's a good sign.
yeah, and my manager is super stoked about it as well. And yeah, like I had that aha moment like I think like 2 months ago again, and that's the best feeling ever.
Yeah. Is DJing, because you're touring right now, and this is a fairly new, I know you've been touring, but not at the level you're doing right now in
No,
terms of like
yeah.
schedule. Is touring live changing your or informing your production? You know, because like you're in the studio and you make music and then you play for a crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. I think other DJs told me that like, oh, once you start touring, you get like this new creative burst. And that hasn't happened to me yet. I've always felt really creative. I've never had writer's block or something like that. But like, I think that was like Lane 8 telling me like, oh, as soon as you play shows, you'll have like, you want to make new music, or like dance music, or like clubby tracks. And it happened before, but not to the extent that I was expecting it. No, I just like, whenever I tour, I don't make as much music as I normally do.
Yeah.
But that's totally fine for me. In the beginning, I was like, holy shit, like, oh, no, I need to tour, I need to play shows, then I also need to make music. But I was like looking at a burnout at one point, and now this tour, I'm like, no, like, I make music, but I don't expect to make I don't force myself to make music every day. No, instead, like, hey, I'll explore a city, or like
Yeah.
if I'm new in a city, like I'll explore it, or like I'm gonna sleep in, and that's where my creativity comes from. If that makes sense.
Yeah. You've mentioned Lane 8 a few times. You're signed to his label, or you've released music on his label. This Never Happened.
Yeah.
How did that come about in terms of like your friendship and collaborating on projects?
So he's always been one of my idols, both musically and like as a person. And I think I started sending him demos in 2018, and I mean, he's really big now, and he was big back then as well, but not as big as now. So I got his email address. I think it was still up in his SoundCloud, his personal email address, and he was really quick with like responding on demos. And he was like, "Yeah, this is sounding cool, but like it could use some work." And then after a couple of demos, I did a track with a guy called Ryan Skyy, and he was like, "I want to send this to Daniel," and I was like, "Yeah, good luck with it," because he passed on my previous demos, and he was like, "Guys, this is great. Like, would love to sign it." And that's when I was like, "Oh, okay, like he likes this." So I made more music in that like style,
Yeah.
and I think a couple of weeks later I sent him like 5 tracks, and he was like, "Okay, dude, this is sounding amazing." Like, and that was my first EP that I signed with him. And from that moment on, I was like, I love how this label works. I love how hands-on he is with the artists he signs. And I was like, yeah, I want to work with this label for a very long time.
Yeah. When you were sending him demos, were you sending demos to other people as well? Was this like a net you were casting, or were you specifically like, I really like this guy and this?
I was like, I didn't send out my demos to a lot of other labels. No, I didn't. The demos that he passed on, I don't think I sent to any other labels, because I was like, no, like I really love this label. I felt a connection with it, if that makes sense.
When you sent your demos, were you just looking for feedback? Were you hoping to get signed?
I was hoping to get signed, but
And was he soliciting demos like on his page? Was he like send me demos, or did you kind of take the initiative?
it's been a
You
while.
remember?
I think he said like demos inquiries, and then his email address. I'm like, nah.
You're like, done.
Yeah. And I was like, hey, let me send him some tracks, and like, of course, I was hoping that it got signed right away, but I'm glad that it didn't, because listening back to it like a year after, I was like, yeah, like I don't want like that to be my first track, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's so nice. I'm a huge proponent of having mentors, having people that are further along the path that you want to go on.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes that person to just, they point out a couple things, and it's just, you're like an architect. It's like,
Yeah.
you just need a little bit of data
Yeah.
from somebody who's doing what you want to do, and you apply it, and then that's just the tweak you need.
Yeah, I have that with Sultan Shepherd as well.
Okay. So they're like a mentor of yours, would you say? Not officially, but
yeah,
kind of like they
like,
give you advice. And
they're also, apart from mentoring, like really good friends as well. I've been like loving their music ever since they did like the whole big room thing.
Yeah.
So I was like looking up to them when I just got introduced into EDM. And like, obviously their sounds shifted a lot, and now they're on This Never Happened as well. And I first met them in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Mirage show, Lane 8 show they were supporting, and I was in town. And I was like, do you want to like make a track together? And we hit the studio, I think a week later. We made a track, and like we just, all three of us, we really vibed. And like every time that I'm in town, they're like, oh, let's go for lunch. And then I can ask them these questions of like, how is touring? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Like, because they've done it before, and they know like how it works. Even when I knew that I was playing EDC in Mexico, I called the guys, and I was like, yo, like, what should I do? And they were like,
what do I play, or
Yeah,
how do I
they were
approach
like,
it?
do you, and like make make a set list that if it's a high energy crowd, you can play high energy, and make a set list, have options, and like, yeah, they've been really, really helpful along for my path. Like, yeah, they've been really, really helpful.
When you met them, how far along were you in your friendship or relationship with the Lane 8 label? Like, had you already released music at that
Oh
point?
yeah, yeah.
This was further in.
Yeah, yeah. So they knew who I was as well. They've listened to my music as well. But it's just fun to have like people who are experienced in it, and like to fall back on them a little bit. Whenever I have questions, I can like text them and be like, hey. Or even when I was done with my first tour, I was like looking into a burnout because I had so much things on my plate, and they were like, bro, like chill down. Like there's no, you shouldn't feel guilty about not making music. Like take time for yourself. And I was like, okay, like if that's coming from them, it must be true, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because they're showing you the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When I'm thinking about when you reached out to Lane 8 with your demos. Why is it that a lot of artists get in their own way? Because you and I, before we started today, we were chatting about how most, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen, there's no clear path into the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's competitive, yes. But when I see people failing, it's almost always because they get in their own way.
Yeah.
Or they give up.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you about you. Why were you able to be sending demos out? What was that part of you?
Because honestly, if I wasn't be doing this, I wouldn't not know what I was doing. Like it was either this or feeling miserable. I was like, yeah, Jay, better. I was like, yo, talking to myself, like, put it all in it. That's because you don't want to feel miserable. And like, I think like a lot of people can deal with rejection, if that makes sense. Because I was like, of course, like when I've sent out demos, a lot of labels didn't even respond. First, they didn't listen. If they listened, they never responded. If they responded, they're like, this isn't good. And that happened a lot. Like, I think like 3 or 4 years in a row. I was like, and it's tough, but I was like, no, like, they're probably right. And I always took the feedback and like worked the feedback into my new tracks. And at a point, like, it just clicks and like, yeah, because failing at something, that's what makes it fun, in my opinion. If it was easy, if your first track would got signed, it's not fun. Like, no, you have to deal with the rejection. And then when it works, when you sign your first demo, you're like, holy fuck, that's the best feeling ever.
So much more satisfying that way.
Yeah.
I always say on the show, I'm a proponent that people should be pursuing a difficult goal or task.
Yeah. Because otherwise, there's no fun in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. As humans, we are mobile creatures. We have to be moving towards an aim.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people that want happiness or they want fulfillment in their life, a lot of people don't realize that fulfillment comes from pursuing something difficult.
Yeah.
Like you're saying.
Yeah.
But also people have to learn delayed gratification.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's like
100%.
They need to be able to go a couple years with not having emails answered.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Like if you look at like, we're talking about music now, but like if you want to start your own company, people think like Bill Gates started Microsoft, and I think like a lot of people think that it just came out of nowhere and be like, hey, in a year he built like this big Microsoft company. But no, he had like a lot of hurdles on the way as well, where he just like fell down and had to get back up again. But that's just part of it. There's no way reaching the top without falling down a couple of times. There's no way to reach the top without like stumbling.
Yeah. What have you learned about your character through this process? Because I was just saying about how you're pursuing something difficult. it's a vehicle because you learn about yourself, you develop yourself. What have you learned in pursuing this music project?
I think that being humble and kind to other people is gonna take you the furthest, if that makes sense. Like,
Okay, so you're humble and kind, and you notice the way people respond to that.
yeah, even when people, even when, let's say, labels reject you, just write them back and say like, "Oh, totally understand it, but thank you for your time. Hope I can send you some future demos." Like these things, and then like labels would respond like, "Of course, like send anything you got," if that makes sense. Or like just be nice to people. Treat people the way you want to be treated, and that's gonna take you far.
It's everything.
Yeah,
What you're talking about is everything. Is human behavior and the way that we interact with people is so important. Through talking to you, I see why you're having success and your career's growing. You have the ingredients.
I mean, I think so.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
do. You have the ingredients in your mindset,
Yeah,
the way you approach life and people, the way you look at difficulty,
yeah.
the way you're looking at the industry. Like you've got the right mindset. So I can see why things are clicking for you. I'm really happy for you.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, I was driving last week and I was listening to Spotify, and every once in a while a song comes on that I'm like, oh, what's this? And I look down and a song just came on randomly. I looked down and it was one of your songs.
Yeah,
And I just smiled because I'm like, oh, that's cool. Because I was going to talk to you, in a week. I'm like,
yeah,
that's really cool. I love to see that. And one of the joys for me doing this show is it was a surprise, but it's not really a surprise now that I think about it. But having on electronic artists that are successful, I was surprised to see how many of you guys, the mindset, the approach to life, the personal growth stuff that I'm interested in. A lot of the guests are interested in it. The spiritual side, like I had cheat codes on, and Matthew was telling me that before they go on stage, he has this thing called like the breath of fire.
Breath of fire.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like he's something about like you put your hands up and you do this like like you breathe really fast, like, and it helps with the anxiety. So we're coming to the end of we're at the end of the segment.
Yeah.
It was a really pleasure having you on the show.
The pleasure was all mine.
Good. Listeners, check out Jerro, Jerro,
Yeah.
social media, Spotify. The music's beautiful. And you're going to be at Academy?
Yeah, March 17. That's gonna be my headline show at Academy, and I'm.
Is this your first headline show?
No.
But in LA, it's a headline show.
It's a headline show, and it's gonna be one of the biggest of the tour.
Cool.
It's also gonna be the last one of the tour, so it's gonna be an extra special one.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. Thank you for checking out Life Rhythms. We'll see you next time.